All right, so little background, I guess, before I get started. So I'm from Washington, D.C., and I work at an organization called Horton's Kids. It's a nonprofit organization in Southeast D.C. The average income in the neighborhood that we work in is less than $10,000 a year. And the majority of the families are on government aid. And the vast majority of our students are actually on some form of IEP or 504 program. This project kind of came about after years of watching our seniors struggle to get ready for college or a training program or anything. We didn't have a formalized college and career program. And so that's kind of where this project started. And this project led me to a promotion to senior college and career programs manager that I started this month. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I started by looking at like what the laws said about what it takes to prepare students who are on IEPs or 504s for college. I'm not going to read these verbatim, but essentially every single law ever written states that every student who graduates from a public school or any school in the United States of America should graduate prepared for college and career. The problem is nothing ever highlights what college and career is. What does it mean for a student to be college and career ready? And a lot of the definitions that I found in the research are based in what it means to be college ready. I operate under the assumption that college is not for everyone. It is not for every student. Maybe some time down the line, but not every student straight out of high school needs to go to college or be on someone's college campus. I know several people who left, they make more than me now without the college degree, sadly, but I know enough people who are successful without it, and it just requires some extra training and some extra effort, not only on their part, but on the adults surrounding them part. People like to think that an 18-year-old is perfectly capable of making all these decisions on their own. They aren't. Lovingly, they're still children and they're kids, and they need assistance and pushes. But I always tell my kids, like, whatever you want to do, I will jump on this train and I will help push this bus forward, but you have to drive it. So I looked up what Washington, D.C.'s definition of college and career readiness is, and it seems like D.C., along with every other state with the exception of Nebraska, has adopted the Common Core State Standards Initiative definition of college and career readiness, which again is firmly based in academics and being prepared in language arts and mathematics and ready to succeed in entry-level college classes. Based on what I know and seeing from our students, as well as students from all over the city at other organizations I've worked with, the vast majority of them aren't. Even if they aren't on IEPs or 504s, they aren't graduating with these skills. I just had to send off 3 kids to college, 2 of whom are reading on 4th grade levels. Don't know how it was, but I had to do it because they were pushed into this direction and I supported them in going in this direction. So then I looked up a lot of the statistics regarding students with IEPs. How are they being successful in college and career? Are they successful in college career? Are they graduating ready for college and career? So this first table comes from a study done in 2009 by, I can't remember the exact organization, but they were in partnership with the Department of Education. And it was an 8-year study looking at students up to 8 years post high school graduation. And if you look at it, students, the dark line is students without disabilities, and the light line is student with disabilities. Students without disabilities are almost twice as likely to go to college and graduate within 8 years than students with disabilities. And then this second pie chart is just for the District of Columbia's. I believe I put the class of 2016. That was the latest data available. And this big brown chunk is all the students on IEPs who graduated in this class who had no plan. There was no data. Nothing was given to them post-graduation, which is actually illegal because they're supposed to graduate with a plan. So if they're not graduating with a plan, the DCPS and DC Public Charter School Board are breaking the law. The problem is a lot of parents don't know. In conversations I've had with parents of students with IEPs, because I try to talk to them before we go into IEP meetings and give them a breakdown of what the law states, what their rights are as parents. And a lot of them don't know and didn't realize that they were essentially being talked at or overrun for years in this process. So we're in the process of teaching them. We actually just got a grant to start a partnership with Austin and Bird, a law firm, a national law firm, to give school advocacy training to our parents. So the study I did, I looked at 8 of our students from the 2018-2019 school year, and I looked at their IEPs. All the students we serve are African American, so this is not a very diverse sample. 3 males, 5 females, ages 14 to 19. I did list some similar studies that have a wider range of populations if you want to look at similar studies of transition plans and IEPs, but generally similar results. So I looked at these 4 questions. Does the IEP contain language and or activities consistent with Common Core State Standard Initiative definition of college and career readiness? Does the IEP contain language and or activities that address non-academic skills recommended for college and career ready students? Does the IEP have detailed student input? And is the IEP customized to the student's strengths and interests? I chose these 4 questions because throughout the research, and if you want to read my actual paper with all the literature review, I can send that to you guys. These were the main 4 questions that came up when it comes to college and career readiness for students with disabilities and students without disabilities. Like, are they given customized plans? Is the language consistent with the definition? Are there any things being addressed for non-academic skills necessary for success? So I looked at those. This is my raw data. It's probably really, really hard to read that chart. So language and or activities consistent with the definition of college and career readiness. There was actual language consistent with their definition. The problem came in where the students weren't meeting the definition, and the schools had made this decision to put that their goal was to go to college despite the kid not meeting this definition. If you look at my chart and at the language, 7 out of the 8 students studied fell below the 45th percentile in reading for their age range and grade level, which means they're reading worse than majority of the students in their same grade. And knowing these students, and we do give literacy tests to all of our students as part of our tutoring program, we had several who were reading on 3rd and 4th grade levels in 11th grade. 2 were reading on a 1st and 2nd grade level in 11th grade. And 7 out of the 8 studied fell below the 30th percentile. The 19-year-old was actually a 2nd-year senior and was not tested during this school year. So I do not know what her results were, but based on what I know of this young lady, similar results. But the school were steadily pushing, go to college, go to college. The goal is for them to go to college, despite the fact that they were not prepared academically to go to college. Language and or activities that address non-academic skills recommended for college and career ready students. So some of these things were like maturity, self-management, resiliency, self-advocacy, the ability to know where to go to ask questions. Once you get to college, your IEP does not follow you. It is up to you as the student to go and get the accommodations you need. I just had to walk one of the students I sent to college through this process. He didn't realize that his IEP was not something he could take to college. So it was very interesting walking him through this process. And we found that only 1 out of the 8 IEPs addressed these non-academic skills. And there was the one student I worked with, and all it basically stated was that he needed to understand his disability and the differences between ADA and IDEA. No real activities on how they would get him to understand this, nothing. And then 2 out of the 8 students received results from an independent living assessment. The assessment basically just tests to make sure that they have the functional capabilities to live independently and function as a citizen of the country without much help or dependencies. And though 2 out of the 8 received results that said they do have deficits that would make independent living difficult, neither were given a goal or activity to address these deficits. Neither of their parents knew that the school had given them this test and that these deficits were there. So when parents don't know these things, they can't do anything at home to also help fill those gaps, which is a big part of the IEP process, that parents have to be involved to help fill in the gaps where the school can't. Student input. So this, I had to create my own little scale of what it meant for student input. So student input section of the transition plan asks for input for academics, functional, and employment interests. So they want to know what the kid is actually interested in doing. And it's supposed to be in the kid's own words. The problem is the majority of them weren't. So if you look at my graphic, the majority of the sections in these IEPs had minimal student input. Only 1 to 2 sentences for the whole section were in the student's own words. And that creates a problem, because that means the student's input isn't being taken into consideration. You're not looking at the student's interests or their strengths or what they actually need. There's not a real conversation happening with these kids about where their deficits lie and what that means for them once they graduate high school. So as a part of the project, I had to look at what that looked like in these IEPs and why. And there really was no why as to what it looked like. The only thing I come up with is either the student didn't give much input or they didn't ask for the input from the student. And then IEPs customized to the student's strengths and interests. These are all the goals for post-secondary education and training. If you look here, every single student, their goal is to go to a college or a vocational school. The problem with this, and it could be also the fact that I know all of these kids, they're not all prepared to go to college. They're not all even prepared to go to vocational school. But that's their goal that they were given. And that's the goal their parents assume that they can meet, because the parent always assumes that the school is doing what's best and the school knows what's best. So if a school is telling you, yeah, your kid can go to college and succeed, who are you to tell them any different, especially when you yourself probably haven't even graduated high school yet? And then the employment goals were essentially after completing post-secondary education will obtain full-time competitive employment. What does that mean? What does that look like for this child? And they don't give you a real explanation or step-by-step process on what this looks like. And so based on all of that information, I made 2 major recommendations to improve this process and for all students, not just students with IEPs, but definitely for students with IEPs. One is a shared definition and policy on what it means for a student to be considered college and career ready. This needs to happen. Right now, we have 10 states with their own separate definition. 48 states are either taking all or in part of the Common Core state standards. And Nebraska, I don't even know what Nebraska's doing. I have no idea what Nebraska's doing. I couldn't figure this out. And then there also needs to be an updated policy on IEP transition plans, and this policy has to start in middle school. The youngest student we looked at, the IEP she was 14, and she's actually doing better than the vast majority of the students whose transition plans started when they were 16 and 17. And part of it is that throughout high school, they're able to work with her every year to get the steps out of the way. And then have a minimum student input requirement that is not just 1 or 2 sentences. Students have to put their input into these transition plans. They have to start putting input into their IEPs. A year and a half ago, I sat in an IEP meeting with a young lady, and she felt like she was just being told that she was stupid and dumb and didn't understand a word that was saying. I had to shut the meeting down, take her out of the room because she started crying. Because she felt like she was essentially being attacked and told that she was dumb because she didn't understand what was going on. No one had ever explained to her what was going on. And here she is, 16 years old, being forced to sit into this meeting, and she has no idea. All she hears is, she can't do this, she can't do that, she can't do this. So student input requirements need to happen, and they need to happen early. And then I would say require meetings to be for goals to be updated at least twice a year. Every time I've gone to an IEP meeting, it's literally been one meeting a year. That's it. No update, no changes. And that's just not enough, because if a goal is for a student to complete a FAFSA, no one ever checks in mid-year to see if that's done. What next? And again, this practicum was done in partnership with Horton's Kids, my place of employment. If you want to learn more about Horton's Kids, I left our website in there. It's a great organization. I've been there for almost 5 years now. And we are always looking for people who are willing to volunteer, donate, and whatever, and get to know our kids, because they're great kids. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I just can't believe some of the stuff is just so incredibly frustrating. So that's where I'm at with that.
I was getting like physically angry when I would read the IEPs. Like, my fiance was like, "What is wrong?" Like, I'm like, they just make me so mad. Like, several times I had to stop myself from sending emails to the compliance managers at the schools and be like, "What is this?"
Yes, I can totally relate to that. So I hear you.
Juanita, I'm curious, is there any tracking done on these students that do go on to your universities that you know are not prepared? Do we know if the success is there or not?
We don't. In the study done by Newman, they did, this is the last study I've seen of the kind where they were able to track students for an extended period of time. And based on this, she said like 40% of the students who have disabilities and went on to a 2-year community college did graduate within 8 years. But this was like the last and latest study that I could find of its kind. So I do know for our organization in particular, we have about an 80% rate of failure when they go to school. Usually they come back, some for just financial reasons, them not being able to afford school, and others because they were academically disqualified from school, and they just couldn't complete it. The students we do know who were most successful, if they have IEPs, were the students who have very involved parents and got them connected to the transition services on college campuses early. And the kids stayed in contact with student support services and us. Usually if a kid falls off from communicating with their case manager at Horton's Kids, we know something's wrong.
How old are your students before you no longer connect with them?
Our organization has been in this community for 30 years, so never. At this point, I think our longest running staff member has been there for 26 years. She's seen half of our students born. She has worked with their parents and then them. So we never, for the most part, lose connection with the students unless they choose to stop coming around or stop interacting with us for some reason. Like, we have former students who sit on our board of directors now.
Joh'nita, I'm impressed, and I'm with Josh. It's frustrating, but thank you for the hard work you're doing.
Thank you.
Hello. Sorry for the noise. I'm in the middle of RA training and doing part of my exam and listening. It was a very good presentation. I really enjoyed it. You had a lot of good information, and the work you do is remarkable. You know, as you talk about the students who are not ready for college, you know, do you guys like send them off with like back to school kind of like things, or like, you know, try to still help them while they're in college, because they're still gonna, you know, somewhat struggle a bit if they're not really prepared?
Yes. So, like I said, the 3 students that we send off to college this year, one leaves Saturday, one left Tuesday, and the other one left about 2 weeks ago. The one that left Tuesday, that was a struggle. Like everything was late, like down to the financial aid paperwork. Like I got her financial aid paperwork finished on Friday. And she was supposed like we were rushing to get her COVID test and all these things. And part of it was that she didn't know. She hadn't been checking her school email because she didn't realize she had to check her school email. She didn't know how to send an email. She sent an email to a financial aid counselor that I was like, oh, maybe send that to me first so I can edit it, please. And so we essentially created, well, her mentor created a Google Doc to-do list for her. Every time we checked something off, she was to check it off and check it off and check it off. And right now we're still teaching her how to write a proper email. When she couldn't leave for school because her late COVID test, I said, make sure you send an email. If you're supposed to be in class Monday, email the Monday professor and the Tuesday professor. This is what you need to say to them and let them know you're not on campus because you're waiting on your COVID-19 test. So we help them every step of the way. We fill in and order. I think we've spent like $500 on Amazon just on like dorm items alone. But as long as they're willing to put in the work and try, we will work with them all the way through to graduation.
That is good. I feel like that is so remarkable because not a lot of kids, who are not ready for college have people like you and other mentors to help them write an email, help them, with all the different stuff for college. Because it is a lot when you are a first-time student going out to college, especially not being as prepared or not knowing how to write professional emails or going to those different resources that are on the college campus. So I really commend you for all your work.
Thanks. And I think part of it too is that I've been there. Like I let them know, like freshman year, I missed about 3 days of my first classes because I was sitting on the financial aid floor waiting to talk to somebody. And they trust you when you give them the real stories and what you went through. Once the kids, for the most part, have your trust and know you have their back, they'll do whatever you ask. Any more questions?
So do you have to do anything with, fundraising efforts, anything or like that? Or can you focus your work on the students?
I focus my work on the students. So we have a very dedicated development team. Our staff isn't very large, but we do have a 3-person development team who are amazing. Like to the point that we're now expanding into a second community. We're starting off with just the younger kids at the second community, but we are able to expand, and I can just focus on the kids and do the work. I show up wherever they tell me to show up to, and I give the spiel wherever they tell me to give the spiel. But that's about it. I work with the kids, which is my strong suit. I always find teaching and working with kids a lot easier than teaching and working with adults.
That is awesome. So do you think, what are your ideas on, because it's such an issue, and I see it across the board too with students who are on IEPs and who are not on IEPs. How can we get them to know that it's okay not to go to a 2-year or 4-year college? It's okay to go into the workplace. Does the students that you work with, are there any things in school, like in terms of job shadowing or field experiences, to get them into different businesses?
So actually that was funny because I had a dream the other day that woke me up and wouldn't let me go to sleep, to basically improve our summer employment program next year to do just that. It wouldn't let me, those things, it just won't let you go to sleep. So I was like, we got to partner with other businesses. We still run like the summer employment program, so we make sure the kids do the hours and get paid, but they go work with them. That gets them out of our hair for the summer, and all we got to do is check up on them, and it gets them actual work experience.
Yes,
works for me. But in years prior, we also do an annual career fair. That prior to me starting the college and career program, I kind of championed and have grown over the years that I was here. and make sure I include lots of people who are from various backgrounds, college educated individuals as well as individuals who aren't. So we had a lot of boys interested in truck driving when they realized like just how much money you can make truck driving. One of our staff members, he made a real world Monopoly. It was very funny. And he created actual job cards with the salary, the starting salary for the job. And you got your base money based on what your job was.
I love it.
And they learned, and it works.
You bet. That's a great idea. And you recently just got a promotion, is that right?
Yes, I'm the new senior college and career programs manager.
All right, congratulations.
Yeah, they really loved the project, and they were really excited for me to jump in and get started, especially with 4 out of our 6 seniors this year having IEPs. So it's going to be some work.
Yes, it is. It is. Well, thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Joh'nita? All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.